Hello, this is Daniela, and this is episode 5 of Historical Paranormal on cattle mutilations. Hundreds of cattle mutilations have been reported in the United States since the early 1960s. During the 1970s, a series of claims of cattle mutilations swept the Midwest and western part of the country. Skeptics have likened this to mass hysteria, sensationalized reporting, tall tales of ranchers dissatisfied with changing laws and politics, evident by the Sagebrush Rebellion in the 1970s and 80s, while paranormal enthusiasts see this as evidence of something otherworldly. Speculation around what causes cattle mutilations has ranged anywhere from natural deaths from predators, to aliens and UFOs, to cryptids like Chupacabra, Mothman, or vampires, to shadow government agencies, to satanic cults, or those who are just in it for animal cruelty. One of the earliest cases in the United States of a claim of cattle mutilation occurred in Leroy, Kansas, by a rancher named Alexander Hamilton, who was awoken by an odd humming noise coming from his field of cattle. He and two of his friends went outside to investigate the source of this peculiar sound. What they witnessed shocked them: a UFO hovering above the pasture. According to the men's testimonies, this craft was around 300 feet long and cigar-shaped. It appeared to be made of a translucent material with 6 occupants visible inside. When the airship approached a young cow, it cried out and attempted to escape, but instead became entangled in fencing. A rope was caught around its neck and extended upwards. According to Hamilton, we tried to get it off, but we could not. We cut the wires loose to see the ship, heifer and all, rise slowly, disappearing into the northwest. While this is a very detailed tale of a cattle mutilation, some skeptics have noted that Hamilton was known to be a tall tale storyteller. September 8th of 1967 is another curious case of a cattle mutilation. In Alamosa, Colorado, in south central Colorado's San Luis Valley, there was an Appaloosa horse named Snippy. One morning, Harry King noticed that only 2 of their 3 horses were outside waiting for grain and water. Thinking this was unusual, he headed out to feed them. He claimed later that he had sensed something was wrong, and he was right. Lady Nellie's 3-year-old young mare was nowhere to be found. After waiting until the following morning for her to show up, Harry went searching for the missing horse. After an hour, he spotted something laying in a meadow. According to an article published by UPI in 1967, the story states the mystery surrounding the death of the Appaloosa from Alamosa deepened Monday with the disclosure that a Denver pathologist took a belated autopsy on the horse and found the brain and stomach cavities to be empty. Miss Lewis has said the doctor sawed into the brain cavity and found absolutely nothing, and opened the stomach expecting to find remains of a digestive organ, but found only a little powdery residue. Interest and speculation about Snippy's case had continued up to present day. In January of 1980, an issue of Omni magazine rehashed the story as Death on the Range. In the report, it stated, subsequent examination by a Denver pathologist revealed that the flesh had been cut with such precision as to preclude the use of a knife. One article reported that bullets had been found in Snippy's body by Dr. Wallace Leary. Realizing that if it were true, which would cast a different light on Snippy's death, ruling out a random act of mutilation. However, the day before the horse disappeared, Agnes King had reported seeing a large, bright object flying over the King Ranch. Corals that allegedly sheared off the top of one fence post before flying off. Elderly Agnes had been doing the dishes in the kitchen during the day when she glanced out the window and saw the silvery object. She didn't have her glasses on, so she wasn't able to get a clear, focused look at whatever it was. Dr. Leary told me that although he was contacted by the owner the day Snippy died, he did not examine the horse until more than a month later. Another curious case of cattle mutilation occurred on June 13th of 1976. Officer Gabriel Valdez of the New Mexico State Police participated in the investigation of an incident that transpired on the ranch of Manuel Gomez near Duke, New Mexico. Officer Valdez noted that in all the cattle mutilations that had occurred in New Mexico and surrounding states at the time, the object of the mutilation had been the lymph node system. This is quite in contrast to the preoccupation many researchers seem to have on the removal of sexual organs and soft tissue in the cattle mutilation cases, and strongly suggests that the focus of the mutilations could be the immune system. The emphasis on the lymphatic functions were not all Valdez noted. In one instance, a mutilated specimen in New Mexico was examined and found to have high concentrations of a specific chemical agent in the bloodstream. A high dosage of atropine insecticide was analyzed in the blood system. Good wrote, Since atropine is a tranquilizing drug, this would imply that either government agents or private individuals were responsible in this case, yet the presence of the drug need not necessarily be related to the mutilation, and investigations into later cases fail to confirm the presence of such drugs. Some common characteristics of cattle mutilations are clean and carried out surgeries, drained blood that shows no signs of immediate trauma or wounds, according to a survey taken by the National Institute for Discovery Science, or NIDS. Mutilation areas usually are 59% of the time eyes, 42% of the time the tongue, 85% of the time genitals, and 76% of the time the rectum. According to Dr. Howard Burgess, nearly 90% of mutilated cattle were between 4 and 5 years old. Some mutilations are said to occur in very brief periods. A 2002 NIDS report relates a 1997 case from Utah. 2 ranchers tagged a specific calf, then continued tagging other animals in the same pasture. The ranchers were, at the most, about 300 yards from the calf. Less than an hour later, the first calf was discovered, completely eviscerated. Most muscles and all internal organs were missing. There was no blood, entrails, or apparent disturbances in the scene. Independent analysts both uncovered marks on the calf's remains consistent with 2 different types of tools, a large machete-type blade and smaller, more delicate scissors. The absence of tracks or footprints around the site of the mutilated carcass is often considered a hallmark of a cattle mutilation. However, in some cases, strange marks or imprints near the site have been found. In the famous Snippy case, there was an absolute absence of tracks in a 100 feet radius of the carcass. Even the horse's own tracks disappeared within 100 feet of the body, but within this radius, several small holes were found seemingly punched in the ground, and 2 bushes were absolutely flattened. In Rio Arriba County, New Mexico, June of 1976, a trail of suction cup-like impressions was found not too far from mutilated 3-year-old cow. The indentations were in a tripod form, 4 inches in diameter, 28 inches apart, and disappeared 500 feet from the dead cow. Similar incidents were reported in the area in 1978. Another peculiar thing about cattle mutilations is they tend to occur along the 37th parallel. The 37th parallel stretches from Chesapeake Bay to Santa Cruz, California. The 37th parallel has been called the UFO Highway and the Paranormal Highway. From sea to shining sea, this line on the map is littered with histories of cattle mutilations, UFO sightings, reports of underground military bases, and ancient native sacred sites. Laboratory reports into cattle mutilations has revealed that mutilated animals have showed high or low levels of vitamins or minerals in tissue samples. However, not all mutilated animals display these anomalies. In one case documented by New Mexico police, an 11-month-old cross, Hereford, Charles bull belonging to Mr. Manuel Gomez of Dulce, New Mexico, was found mutilated on March 24th of 1978. Both the liver and the heart were white and mushy. Both organs had the texture and consistency of peanut butter. The animal's heart as well as bone muscle samples were sent to the Los Alamos Scientific Laboratory for microscopic and bacteriological studies, while samples from the animal's liver were sent to 2 separate private laboratories. Los Alamos detected the presence of naturally occurring Clostridium bacteria in the heart, but was unable to reach any conclusions because of the possibility of post-mortem contamination. Samples from the animal's liver were found to be completely devoid of copper and contained 4 times the normal level of zinc, potassium, and phosphorus. The scientists performing the analysis were unable to explain these anomalies. Some common explanations when looking deeper into what is causing this is the government. According to Chris O'Brien, who has researched cattle mutilations for 2 decades. A more likely answer is that these killings are conducted by unknown agencies monitoring the food chain to prevent another outbreak of bovine spongiform encephalopathy, commonly known as mad cow disease, that plagued England in 1996. Although many of the affected animals were destroyed, their bodies were turned into fertilizers, much of which was shipped around the world. O'Brien said it's possible that mad cow disease prions weren't destroyed in the process. He thinks someone is killing and testing selected animals to make sure there isn't another outbreak. Another thing that lends credence to the idea of it being a government operation is the sighting of black helicopters near mutilation sites. On April 8th of 1979, 3 police officers in Dulce, New Mexico reported a mysterious aircraft which resembled a U.S. military helicopter hovering around a site following a wave of mutilations, which claimed 16 cows. On July 15th of 1974, 2 unregistered helicopters, a white helicopter and black twin-engine aircraft, opened fire on Robert Smith Jr. while he was driving his tractor on his farm in Honey Creek, Iowa. This attack followed a rash of mutilations in the area and across the nearby border in Nebraska. The interest of the FBI and CIA could also explain a government connection. Some speculate that clandestine weapons are being tested on cattle. Evidence for a secondary explanation are natural causes by predators and animal cruelty. Some animal experts, such as Colorado-based vet Truman Smith, don't believe there is any great mystery behind the mutilations, just the work of animal predators. He states, "I can see why people think it's something more than just predators, but it's always amazed me how smooth a job they can do." Some common features that are used to explain missing organs are missing mutilated mouth or lips, anus, and genitalia are explained as contraction of missing damaged areas due to dehydration, the actions of small scavengers burrowing parasites, seeking to enter or consume the body in areas where skin is the thinnest. Missing mutilated eyes and soft internal organs are explained as the action of carrion feeding insects such as blowflies and opportunistic or carrion birds such as vultures, which are known to direct themselves toward an animal's eye and enter the body through the openings of the mouth and anus in order to feed on soft internal organs. The absence of blood is explained as blood pooling in the lowest points in the body where it all breaks down into its basic organic components. Blood that is external to the body or the area of wound, being consumed by insects or reduced by solar desiccation. Surgical incisions in the skin are explained as tears in the skin created when it's stretched by postmortem, bloat, NS, or dehydration, causing the animal's hide to shrink and split, often in linear cuts. Incisions caused by scavengers or predators, possibly exasperated. However, what is odd is the draining of the blood, which has very little explanation given. And the third popular explanation is cults. Closely related and deviant hypothesis of cattle mutilation are that cattle mutilations are coordinated acts of ritual sacrifice carried out by organized groups. Beliefs held by proponents of the cult hypothesis vary, but may include that the apparent absence of blood at mutilation sites may indicate cult members harvesting it. The organs have been removed from cattle for the use of rituals, and the unborn calves have been harvested from mutilated cattle. In September of 1975, a forestry service employee in Blaine County, Idaho, reported seeing groups of people in black hooded robes. Several cattle were found mutilated in the area the following day. On October 9th of 1975, a motorist on U.S. Highway 95 in northern Idaho, in an area of frequent cattle mutilation, reported to police that 15 masked individuals formed a roadblock with linked arms, forcing him to turn around. Public interest in the cult hypothesis waned during the 1980s, but interest was maintained by proponents such as Colorado-based television evangelist Bob Larson, who campaigned to raise public awareness of links between cattle mutilations and cult activity through his ministry and radio shows. Another proponent of the cult hypothesis was Montana author Roberta Donovan. In her 1976 publication, Mystery Stalks the Prairie, she documents the experience of Deputy Sheriff Keith Wolverton of Great Falls, Cascade County, investigating cattle mutilations with suspected cult involvement. Since the beginning of the cult hypothesis, law enforcement agents in several states and provinces, including Alberta, Idaho, Montana, Iowa, have reported evidence implicating cults in several instances of cattle mutilation. During the investigation, the FBI and ATF were unable to find appropriate evidence, including signs of consistency between mutilations, to substantiate the animals had been the victims of any form of ritual sacrifice or organized mutilation effort. They were also unable to determine how or why a cult will perform procedures that would result in the anomalies reported in some necropsies, or to verify that the anomalies were connected to the mutilations themselves or the result of human intervention. In some cases, claims of cults were traced back to rumors from high school students that were circulated as a joke. Whatever the cause of the bulk of cattle mutilation cases is, or whether they are related or unrelated, has long fascinated many and remains a popular urban legend. For every speculation, there's something that doesn't line up. Could it be multiple factors? Could it be the work of extraterrestrials or something otherworldly? Or cult groups or perhaps government agencies, testing to prevent diseases like mad cow disease. I'd like to know what you all think, and I hope that you enjoyed this episode of Historical Paranormal, Episode 5.